to save up the money.
I can imagine.
Good morning on this nice warm day, and welcome to the Spiritual Society of Virginia. Sunday, we will read from the book Our Daily Bread, and the message written by Emmanuel is entitled The Thorn, and given to us by Chico Xavier through his mediumship. Paul is recorded his second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 12, verse 7, where he wrote, "And so that I would not become haughty," and haughty, for those of us, just like myself, had to look it up again just to make sure, means arrogantly superior. Because of these exceedingly great revelations, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan. And then Emmanuel writes, self-praise is a highly dangerous attitude for people who supposedly are unaware of the fact that they are in a realm of arduous service, where they must bear difficult witness each and every day. This mental attitude is not only alarming, but erroneous, because there will come a time when the thorn in the heart will unexpectedly appear. Prudent disciples will nourish confidence without boasting, and will show themselves to be courageous without being presumptuous. They recognize the extent of their debt they owe the Master, and they do not glorify themselves, knowing that only glory belongs to the Lord. There are a lot of unwatchful and troubled people who, after having received the adulation of the multitudes, proceed to suffer the bitterness of loneliness. Many of them take great pleasure in the heights of fame, as if they had become indestructible idols, only to weep alone later on with the thorn they had ignored in the depths of their soul. Why pretend to be infallible teachers when we are but simple learners? Would it not be better to serve the Lord with prudence in youth or old age, in abundance or scarcity, as a manager or subordinate, observing our vulnerable points in the shortcomings and imperfections of what we have up until now? Let us remember that Paul of Tarsus met Jesus personally. He was appointed for divine service in Antioch by the very voices of heaven. He fought, worked, and suffered for the gospel of the kingdom. And in writing to the Corinthians, already old and tired, he still referred to the thorn he had been given, so that he would not be haughty as he carried out the sublime work of revelation. And this morning's message that was picked out was, life demands more understanding than knowledge. So let us recognize God in our life every day. That's a challenge. But let us use humility to assure that the thorn of pride does not pierce our heart.
What a message. Beautiful. So, as we're deeply touched by this wonderful message that John brought to us, so fitting, we want to pray. As we prepare for prayer, I want you to look at this book. Look at this book. Is it thin or thick? Does it look like a brick? It's like a brick, right?
You can make like a bunch, like you can make a house out of stuff.
You see? That's a good idea, Virginia. It's a brick. Today we're going to talk about this brick, and we can actually use it to build a house for our immortality. So we have a lot to share today. So let us begin by expressing our gratitude to God. But you know, one thing we want to do first is praise. I know when kids go inside, they're like, praise, oh no, praise, no. But what is praise? Who wants to tell me what's praise? What is praise? Praise is to praise is
Praise is when you're thanking God and thanking Him for everything that He's given us. It's basically thank, but
yeah.
just a little bit different.
Yes, Gabe. It's a synonym is to adore, to love, to admire God, and say, can't believe you made my pet. So fluffy, so cute, so mischievous sometimes. And parents adore God by looking at their children and say, can't believe you made this cute little child that I want to squish. This is to adore. When we see the ocean and are mesmerized about it. So we in our prayer today, we want to adore God. All right? Let us close our eyes and say, God, we're learning to love you, though you love us ever since. We are amazed because you created us. You created this reincarnation for us, the opportunity to learn and progress. Thank you. You don't mind that we have committed wrongs in the past because you're saying, begin anew, start over. Thank you. We want to thank you for the life of Paul of Tarsus, who opened the doors to a new life between us and you, and in the way of Christ. The divine Messiah, loving and caring, you prepared to lead us to you every day. We love this life, and we love this community you brought to our lives. Every friendship, every connection. May we cherish each other's company in your company. And may we rejoice today, wishing that those who are present and also connected online, live and on demand, feel this banquet of light with you. We feel the light that comes from on high, and Paul himself blessing us today as he inspires all of us to keep on sharing the much good we have received. We need your guidance and protection, and we are grateful for your permission to begin this wonderful therapeutic learning session together. And so be it. I have to say, we here are going to work on Paul the brick. But you guys, together, the teens and the kids, exceptionally today, we work on a program that is phenomenal and fun. We look forward to seeing you guys. Come back to talk about Paul the brick, okay?
Is like today is he able to come to my soccer game?
What time is it?
It's right after. It's when my mom's leaving.
Yeah. Okay.
Is he able to come?
Yes. You want her to come? We
But,
can make
and then after
arrangements.
that, I want to go to. And then after, because I want to go to your house. But then the
Okay.
only possible.
Okay, we can talk about it for sure. Okay. He's making a case. Okay. I love kids. Life is so much better with kids, right? All right. For us, okay. So let us begin. We're gonna begin right here. All right. Didn't work. Okay, take a paloma. Feel it. Feel the weight. You can do weightlifting with this book and be pumped. You can. So this is a book that for Chico Xavier alone was his preferred. Of all the almost 500 books he psychographed, this was the number one. Why? Why? When he psychographed this book, where did he do it? Not in the Spiritist Center. This was uniquely psychographed in the model farm, Fazenda Modelo, where he used to work. His boss lived in a house therein, and there was like a basement. You can go visit. We visited it years ago. It's a place to go when you go to Brazil. It's in the city of Pedro Leopoldo, nearby. So if you go to Brazil, the southeast, the state of Minas Gerais, on the east side, there's the city of Belo Horizonte, the capital, which is, as the name says, a beautiful city. And a few miles away, it's same distance between the center and Washington, D.C. There was Chico Xavier, where he was born, where he worked most of his life. And when he worked there, during his lunch breaks, he would be securely into this tiny room, psychographing this book, while the boss was a spiritist, would be securing that nobody's going to disturb, etc. But interesting enough, throughout the psychographing of this book, there was a frog in the room all the time. Don't ask me why, because I don't know the answer. That's a good thing to investigate. We need to ask everybody, why was the frog there? I asked, but I don't remember what people answered to me. Why was the frog there? Because when he finished, the frog was gone. So, the book and the frog. Never forget about it. So, Chico Xavier psychographed this scene, the scenes that he was writing. He was completely away, and Emmanuel would use his hands. It was pretty much automatic writing. And he would be seeing the very scene. So when you read this book, it's like a movie. It feels like a movie. It doesn't counter anything that is written already in the New Testament, but it adds elements that we didn't know. And there are historians in Brazil who researched on this. And this is also a book that can be groundbreaking for the people who study Paul's passages as scholars around the world, because it discloses elements that were never foreseen, and now researchers are identifying. But this book was written way back in 1941. Imagine Chico Xavier in a tiny town, village pretty much, not knowing anything, never traveling, only had a 4th grade, and able to write a book. The language of this book, so elevated. It's so, the style, Emmanuel's style, it's so hard. Like when you type an email, you have to think a million times, right? When you're texting someone, like, what do I say? Just a line, and you're thinking, imagine psychographing a book like this, in this style, with this language. And it's a book that when you read, you feel elevated. It's good to read all types of books. Love reading books, right? But you see the difference between reading spiritist books and non-spiritist books. Those don't nourish the soul, usually. Some exceptions. This is beyond knowledge. It's about true nourishment. They said that the pages of these books, when you open, the original is always in the spiritual realm. Nothing happens in material life before coming from the spiritual realm. So the original is in the spiritual realm. They say that this book is like when you open, it's pure light. So why we're emphasizing so much? Because today we're celebrating the 81st anniversary of the book. Last year, we're still in the COVID, so we couldn't do a full event. So that's why we transposed to this time. Last year was the 80th anniversary of the publication of the book. The subtitle of the book is Historic Episodes of Primitive Christianity. What does that mean? He's talking about the first Christians. Why does it matter to you, to me, to us? Some people are like, okay, very religious. It's not. It's about personal life. The other day I was talking to a boy who was very smart. He's 16 years old. And he came to me because he plays soccer. And something happened. He felt not very confident. So he wanted to boost his confidence. And he said, you want to boost your confidence? You need a model. You need a model. If you don't have a model, it's going to be hard to know where you're getting to. You need a goal. Who in your life is a model of confidence? Science says we need to have role models. We spiritists have already chosen ours according to what we know, with Jesus Christ. But he doesn't play soccer. That's what you think. I think he does. Because pure spirits know everything. Everything about everything, including sports. Everything. It's mind-blowing. Thinking about Jesus playing soccer, right? But the good spirits know everything about everything. So a good model, but it could be anyone. It could be a wonderful soccer player. Aim at that soccer player. Watch videos about how they talk, how they play, how they interact, their mindset, and visualize yourself projected there. For everything in life, we need a role model. To be good parents, we need a role model. To be good teachers, to be professionals, to be good wives and husbands, we need role models. And Paul of Tarsus is a role model in many ways, though he had his model, Jesus Christ. At the beginning of the book, Emmanuel says that not only Paul of Tarsus was called to this, that he says in these very words, in reality, all ordinary men and women have been personally called to serve the Christ. Meaning all of us here. And you're like, really? I was personally called? What does that mean? And then people think that it's to be a priest or a nun. That's not what they meant. To serve the Christ doesn't mean getting out of our lives. It's the way we stay in our lives. Personally called. Every one of us. And then he says the following to us. And I'll read. This is the very preface. Rarely we read prefaces, but Spiritist books, we must read the preface. Because it's the tone of the book. And he says, the form may vary, but the essence of the summons is always the same. The call to the ministry sometimes arrives subtly, unexpectedly. Most people, however, are resistant to the Lord's generous invitation. Question number 1 to us today. Are we resistant? No, that's for Vanessa, that's for John, for Paula, for this. Everyone. Are we resisting? He says, very well. Jesus is not a master of forceful means. And if the figure of Paul appears to be greater in your eyes, it's because he hearkened to the call, repented, denied himself, took up his cross, and followed Christ to the end of his work on the earth. Who in this world does not have a ministry from God? Who? Can't stay home, washing dishes, doing laundry, and paying our bills and thinking that that's it. That's not why we are reborn. We're not reborn to go to work, come back, and have a house and have children and grandchildren. That's not the reason why we're here. Many will say they do not know what the particular calling is, that they are ignorant in this respect. However, that's Emmanuel saying, we will answer to that. We will answer that besides ignorance, there is neglect and much pernicious caprice. Food for thought. Our program today will be a little longer than usual, just a little, but needed. We will have 2 parts. We have the whole team here, including Carol, who is online, to join and help us. The first part is about our inner journey. We'll go through Abigail as the groundbreaking feminine in us, the meek and peaceful like Stephen, Paul and our road to Damascus, and then we'll do part 2, our spiritist journey. And then we're going to talk about teamwork as the only pathway to evolution, the healing effects of the good news, and of course, we're spiritists. Spiritists without spirits. So we need to talk about mediumship. Some people say, I'm a spiritist. They have never studied mediumship. They don't know where it goes. They know, but they don't practice. They are Kardec says it in the Medium's book. They are just theoretical spiritists because they know the knowledge, but they don't practice. We need to practice, not only morally, but also the communication into worlds. Of course, it takes a lot of work and teamwork, but it must be done. So I will begin today by talking about Abigail. Okay, and I'll pass the word to our Carol, who is next to us, to talk about Stephen. But this book begins the first 3 chapters. For those who are parents or want to be parents, read the first 3 chapters and see what good parenting is all about. Because there we have this group. Abigail, only 18. Stephen, 25. Then he was called Jeziel. And the father, Joshadab. They're Jewish. They are living at a time when Romans were crushing the Jews, and that was hard. And Joshadab was not very happy. The mother discarnated. But we're going to see how the mother raised her kids to God, not to the world, to God. She died, but they kept themselves focused. The father is still very agitated by the injustices of the world. And I'm not going to spoil, but we have to read the book. There's a moment in which they are imprisoned without justification, brutally. But Abigail and Stephen are brothers and sisters to be emulated. Best brother and sister relationship I've ever seen. We want to read and dream about it. Dream about it. There is a moment they are in prison. The father is sleeping after being, spending a whole day in true challenges. And at some point, Abigail very kindly, the father put them in this scenario, but none of them are upset with the father. Abigail was listening to her brother's words, and she said, "Are you grieving? Are you angered by what our father did?" And Jaziel says, "Not at all. We are undergoing an experience that must be most suited for our redemption." Carol will talk about it. Otherwise, God would not have sent it to us. And Abigail, in the same line of thought, she replies with her beautiful soul, "No, we must not be angry at Father. I was thinking that if Mother had been with us, he would not have taken his complaints so far with such sad consequences. We don't have the power of persuasion that she had, always caring, always enlightening our home. Do you remember the power of motherhood, friends? She taught us that God's children must always be ready to carry out the divine wishes. The prophets, in turn, explain to us the men are rods in the field of creation. The Almighty is the farmer. We must be the flowering or fruitful branches of his work. God's word teaches us to be good and kind. The good must be the flowers and the fruit that heaven asks of us. Friends, they are not talking this having tea. They are in prison, not American prisons. We're talking about those dark, filthy prisons of 2,000 years ago. How can you keep yourself so composed and kind? So today we're going to talk about us. You and I, no matter if we're in the body of men or women, we have the feminine and the masculine. And if you say, no, man, so masculine, that's bad. Because too much masculine derails in a lot of bad things. And no, but I'm a woman. I'm not. Too much of it leads us to depression. Too much of the feminine, too much meaning the low energy of the feminine may lead us into depression, 10,000 things. So we want to balance. The masculine and the feminine in us need to be balanced. It's not balanced. The world's not balanced. Still, the masculine is still very forceful and the feminine is still very disturbed. But just so we know, the feminine is about competing, which is not bad when it's balanced with collaboration. It's about hierarchies, rules, independency, firmness, toughness, achievement, discipline. It's about determination. It's about courage. And the feminine is about collaborating, networking, adapting. So if you get married, time goes by and you don't adapt, our feminine is not well. If we don't know how to collaborate, teamwork, our feminine is not well. Because the feminine is about this interdependence, being flexible, understanding, as John mentioned. It's about relationships, about being open to the learning, intuition, creativity. See how much we still need to unfold in us? And Abigail was very good at it. Unity, interdependency, collaboration, teamwork, adapting. Adaptation is so important for survival, but not only physical survival, mental. Adapting the best way, but we resist. We immigrants, right? We resist. We're like, no, but I want to come and I want to speak in Portuguese in the center. No, you don't. You want to adapt and speak in English. Oh, but I want to eat rice and beans every day, everywhere. No, you don't. You want to enjoy the life in the country that embraced you. That's adaptation. You want to counterbalance. So we want to expand this feminine in us. It's when we reincarnate and God is saying, I'm giving you a new life, but we don't want it. I don't like this brother, this sister. I don't like that relative. I don't like this country. I don't like this. I don't like that. I mean, we don't adapt. We're not open. Abigail was completely different. She was very humble, modest, but she got engaged to Saul of Tarsus. Was the man at the time. If he had his carriage, was like the best in town. He had the best of everything, like top elite society, financially, status. He had like a Ferrari at the time, wearing Armani, maybe. See, for her, she didn't choose him because of any of this. It happened. But in the dialogues here, I won't have time to read, but you read it. She's not vain in her dialogues. Saying, yeah, go let get married and make that house and in that neighborhood. Right? No, she's talking about God. And he's upset and she's always calming him down. But he listens to her. He knows how to teamwork. And time and again, I will show this. So we keep glancing at these skills, some of the features of feminine and masculine, so we can keep opening up to other things we need to expand. When Abigail faced the brutal death of her brother, Stephen, she was not furious with her fiancé, Saul of Tarsus, who ordered the brutal murdering. Read the book because it's turn of events that we never expect. It's unbelievable. The way this book is written is a masterpiece. She's not upset with him. She understands him. Only the feminine can understand such brutality, such cruelty. She, as flexible, compromising, understanding as she is, when she's at deathbed, he comes back, repents from everything. And she says, we can no longer be married on earth, but we'll always be together. This is reality. She's not sad like, oh, life is so bad to me because look, now we could be together and God is taking me away. She understands. She surrenders. She adapts quickly to all of the events that come to her life. And that's a good thing for us. Because as she does this, she is being used as an instrument collaborating with the Christ. When Emmanuel says we're being called to serve the Christ, Abigail was serving the Christ. Not in a church, but in her life. Because of her own experience. Paul, then Saul of Tarsus, comes to know that the Christ is so powerful. That he is like, can't be possible. He wants to compete with the Christ. Takes the road to Damascus and finds, through the hands of Abigail and Stephen, who are already in the other side, learning. I'll skip this. Go straight to this. Through Abigail, he finds Christ. She served the Christ, not in a church, in her life. That's what we're being called. Her feminine, collaborating, compromising, understanding, flexible, open-minded, allowed her to be a good instrument to take her beloved Saul of Tarsus to Paul, to Jesus, when he became a new Paul of Tarsus. To understand more of this feminine that now continues in her brother, in his meekness, in his peacemaking skills, Carol, who is here with us, is going to help us. Right, Carol?
Right, Vanessa. Absolutely. Thank you. So, dear friends, let us continue our journey now together with Stephen. As Vanessa told us, like Abigail, he accepted the call to serve Christ, even though he didn't know of the Christ yet. He already carried in him the Christ consciousness. So, in this moment of distress, dear friends, where his father was brutally assaulted and felt revolt, he instead, bringing the feminine in, expressed the consent of his heart. In the Gospel of according to Spiritism, we learn that resignation, acceptance, meekness is the consent of the heart. So instead of revolting, he brought peace and balance to his home. How so? Instead of accusing those who brutally assaulted his father, he proposed that they open the Testament and read the sacred words. So he again was the voice of resignation. One more time, what is resignation? It is the consent of the heart. Because he was meek and peaceful internally, he was able to consent with his heart and accept reality, knowing that only good things happen through the will of God. So he knew how to find the good, even in moments of distress. This, dear friends, is true peace. Peace is not lying on a hammock and having everything lined up as we wish. Peace, how do we express it? How do we cultivate it? As Stephen has done. In moments of distress, he made the inner decision to trust in God. God is center stage in his life, not a satellite running around it when he needs it. How about us? Do we trust in God's will? Can we seek the good in moments of distress? Are we able to practice resignation? These are the qualities of the feminine that Stephen was able to express. And he brings the feminine yet again when he expresses flexibility, adaptation, acceptance in another moment of distress. His father decides to destroy a property of his own accuser, of the person who hurt him physically out of revolt. Stephen brings in the voice and the presence, the embodiment of peace by accepting the situation and even helping his father. He does not accuse. He does not say, "Oh, dear God, why is this happening to us?" Instead, he brings consolation to his father. He is a medium of hope to his father, saying to his father that God shall provide. Therapeutic question for all of us, dear friends. How about us? In moments of distress, are we able to be a treasure of hope and trust that God shall provide? This is the proposal that Stephen is bringing to you and I. And even when he is imprisoned, he is able to find the good. Again, he brings the feminine in through meekness and through consenting with his heart that the best shall be brought forth. He says to his sister, God is not punishing us. In his words, he says, God is like a loving father that relies on his older children to educate the younger ones. So this is why we have been given this opportunity of redemption and service. Another therapeutic question for you and I, dear friends, as we think about the meekness and resignation that Stephen displays. Are we able to perceive the challenges that are brought to us as opportunities of redemption, as a sign and as a sign of God's love? We are so thankful to Stephen as he helps you and I, all of us, to re-signify difficulties. He's helping us to learn the new. So another question for us is, how have we been, quote unquote, reading, perceiving, interpreting our difficulties? Stephen is bringing us a new lens, the lenses of the Christ consciousness, telling us that difficulties are an opportunity for us to express our faith and love for God. And his willingness, dear friends, to express faith and love for God continues on, because even when he is brutally assaulted as he tries to defend his father before the Roman Empire, he asks his sister to sing Psalm 23, saying that the Lord is his shepherd and that he shall not want. What happened next? He was taken into slavery. And do we think that he revolted? No, dear friends. As an example of meekness and the embodiment of true peace, he cheers on his colleagues at the time, and he says to them, and we are quoting his words, he says to them, "Friends, all works are the works of God, and we are now in the condition to be servants of God." So, how do we, dear friends, you and I, as we undergo an inner journey ourselves, how do we know if we are learning to be meek? One such condition, as we learn with Stephen today, is if we are able to find the good, to find the positive, to find God even in the midst of apparent difficulties. So, how are we doing in that regard? Today, we are being invited to find God's love in challenging circumstances, to find the gifts that God has granted us, as Stephen continues to do. He, in his kindness, helps a Roman aristocrat, noble Roman, who gets sick. And in doing so, he gets sick himself. But instead of despairing in the face of probable physical death, he finds liberty as a sign of gratitude from the nobleman from Rome who sets him free. But as he is almost losing his physical strength, dear friends, we see divine providence at work as he goes to the mention of the way and meets Simon Peter. As Simon Peter recounts the journey of the divine Messiah, our shepherd Lord Jesus, he recognized Master Jesus. Stephen recognizes Master Jesus as our Lord, and he completely surrenders to the call. So, throughout his journey, we see in Stephen the Christ consciousness flourishing in every one of his actions. He doesn't have everything lined up. He doesn't have material comfort. He doesn't have status. He doesn't have the best car, the best house, the best clothing, the best family dynamics. No. But he has the Christ consciousness within, and he makes an inner choice, an inner decision to trust God and to be at peace. Once he meets the Messiah through the words of Simon Peter, all pieces fall into place and he becomes a beautiful spokesperson for the gospel of our Master Jesus Christ, surrendering to the call. Another therapeutic question for us all. How about you and I? How about all of us? If we are called to complete tasks at home, at work, at the center, do we say, oh, why me? We are not ready. Why are we being called? No, this is not for us. Or no, maybe later. Or no, we don't have time. Are we, dear friends, you and I, all of us? How is our inner disposition? Are we able to surrender and accept the call, bringing in the feminine with the determination of the masculine to serve Master Jesus? Or are we still creating inner impediments that are manifested outwardly? How are we doing in that regard? This is a good opportunity for us to assess ourselves. And then, of course, Stephen, as Vanessa already mentioned to us, is judged and condemned for being a follower of Master Jesus and for not hiding his conviction. Another therapeutic question for us. Are we able to have this, in the words of Emmanuel, invincible courage that Stephen displays? Or do we still find excuses for not following the Christ Do we still say, oh, we can't do it because we have work to do? Oh, we can't do it because our family members don't accept it. Or we can't do it because there are no centers where we live, or we live too far away, or we don't have a car, or we don't have resources. How are we doing? Are we still hiding our conviction? Stephen, dear friends, did exactly the opposite. With the meekness brought in by the feminine and the determination brought in by the masculine, he, with much conviction, declared his faith. And when Emmanuel describes his inner dialogue, we see that as he was being assaulted and insulted, he says to himself, what an honor it is for me to serve the Christ in this way, because the Christ lost his physical life brutally. Who am I and who is the Christ? So Emmanuel tells us that he displayed invincible courage and serenity due to his unshakable faith. And what happens next? He continues to be assaulted, and in the climax of his journey, as he is about to expire in the physical realm, meeting his sister for the very first time after years, and as she, as Vanessa says, expresses surprise in seeing him, we would now like to ask for permission from everyone in both realms to read Abigail's and Stephen's actual dialogue, because this is a true example of meekness and surrender to God's will, accepting the call of the Christ. We see in Stephen and Abigail two people who made the inner decision to follow the Christ. As we hear their words together, beloved friends, let us meditate upon where we find ourselves. So let us now read. Stephen says to Abigail, I am dying, but the soul is immortal. I am sorry to leave you when I've just seen you again, but I shall help you from wherever I might be. Again, we see resignation, acceptance, and courage on the part of Stephen. And Abigail says, listen, what did this Jesus teach you to lead you to such a grievous end? Wouldn't whoever abandons a loyal servant like this be a cruel master instead? Pause. Do we ask ourselves these questions? Like, oh, why do we have problems if we follow the Christ, if we do everything quote unquote correctly? Stephen, dear friends, did not bargain with the Christ, did not say to the Christ, I will give you this if you give me that. He didn't undergo an exchange business transaction of the soul with the Christ. No, he surrendered to the Christ without conditions. And we hear this in his very words, which we shall read right now. Stephen says, don't think like that. Jesus is just and merciful. He promised to be with us until the end of time. Later, you will understand. He taught me to love my executioners. And this brings us to another point, dear friends. A sign of meekness is acceptance without conditions, learning to love even those who challenge us. And Stephen is the embodiment of that when he says to Abigail regarding Saul of Tarsus, he says, May God bless you both. Your betrothed is not my enemy, but a brother. Saul must be good and generous. He defended Moses to the end. When he meets Jesus, he will serve him with the same zeal. Be a loving and faithful companion for him. So we see Stephen leaving the truth of the Christ, living in meekness, not through mere words. As Vanessa said, look at his conditions. He's not drinking tea, and still he is able to say that Saul is his brother, and he is the strength in his meekness that will push Saul forward towards the light of the truth. So as we take in Stephen's living example of meekness and decision to be a peacemaker in the name of God and of the Christ, we shall now continue in our journey to Damascus, dear friends.
Here and now we should be good. All right, friends, we are now able to recognize virtues by looking at Abigail and Stephen. Virtues that seem hard to be compatible, meek and courageous, sweet but firm and strong. That's what we're talking about, balance. And it's important for us to recognize that because we ourselves, all of us included, we haven't found that balance most likely. And we can probably find ourselves closer to Saul. Because when we compare Saul to Stephen, it's not like they didn't understand their calling. Saul felt in him, it says in the book, since his teenage years ever, that he was meant to serve God. He felt it. He knew it. What is the difference between Saul and Stephen in the way they serve God? They both had the calling. They understood it. But Stephen didn't understand what love was. He thought loving for God was above everybody else. No matter what, I will serve God. And the way to get there, we disregard other people. He couldn't see Jesus yet. Which, thank goodness, we learn in Paul and Stephen that we don't need to reincarnate to find redemption. Saul became Paul in one lifetime. And we all benefited from that change today. It's quite incredible. So the road to Damascus is about us. Modeling Saul to Paul, but it's about us in our inner journey. And where are we going? What are we doing? How are we doing it? When
Saul left Jerusalem saying, I'm going to go to Damascus because I want to find this person that talked to Abigail, changed everything, and he had blood in his eyes. He was in what we call the torment. We've been studying a lot about torment and conflict, the difference. And he was in this torment. It's almost like we are in the middle of the hurricane and we cannot see anything else other than the storm. We feel it. What are the type of feelings we have and emotions? We are angry. We are disturbed. We're confused. In Spiritism, it's like obsession. We are so blind that we cannot see reality. Reality becomes something else. We think what we're doing is real, but it's not real. And we're highlighting parts of the book because these are things we feel when we are in the torment. And friends, we are all in between the torment and the conflict, the torment and the conflict. We're trying to go towards conflict and learning and studying, and that's why we're here. So it's okay. But we now can recognize these points in ourselves. So it says, on the day before his arrival at Damascus, and nearly at the end of a difficult and arduous journey, the young man from Tarsus felt that the bitter memories constantly assaulting him had grown stronger. Memories. So it is not an external thing. The torment, it's not external. The torment happens inside of us. The mental duels, the conversations that they spin in place. We're talking about it over and over and over and over again in our minds. We talk ourselves down and we talk ourselves into negative emotions. It was really hitting him on that journey. And that is so interesting to think that the journey was hard, not because he was on a horse and they don't have the right equipment or food or water. It was hard, difficult because of his mental battles. Secret powers were forcing him into profound self-examination. He recalled the early dreams of his youth. His soul was facing serious doubts. So we stop and we think, if we haven't gone through serious doubts, we will. We all will. Is that a bad thing? No. Why? Because there are secret powers around us, forcing us for this self-examination. What are the secret powers? God. Of course. God says you're going to reincarnate in a family that's going to help you do this self-examination every day, every hour, every minute, all the time. And if it's not there, it's going to be somewhere else. Even if it means you're by yourself, far away from your family, feeling you are isolated, even that, we stop and say, why? Because then we wish we had a family. Maybe in prior lives we didn't have, or we had a family, we were not very good with our family. And now we're learning how much we love our families. So he was in an inner struggle that was quite something. We can't imagine other than just going by Emmanuel's words and picturing this movie. Him on the way to Damascus with a plan. I mean, he wanted to destroy anybody that was associated with Christ. Especially after meeting Stephen. And at Stephen's last moment, Stephen forgave him. He couldn't believe it. He could not believe it. So what are these torments? Now that's for us. How can we identify if I am in a torment or not? The first thing is, a torment is when we are not in accordance with the divine laws. Oh, but what are the divine laws? Let us go back. We don't have time to cover right now, but you go to the Spirit's book It's going to have all the laws. Do we need to read to know? Is good so that we can think about it, but we already know them. Because the divine laws are already inside of us. We know when we do something wrong, we feel it. That's all we need to know. When we do it, we don't feel good. We go back, we think, so we know we're not in accordance with the divine law. But go read because it helps us understand more and more. Torments also demonstrate to us a lack of virtue. Difference between Stephen and Saul. Stephen already understood these virtues. He knew about God. He read about God. He felt God. He applied himself to God. Saul wasn't quite there. He knew about God, but the application of the divine laws, it was still a struggle. Like he didn't understand this meekness. He felt that you had to be strong, no matter what. And now this third one will surprise all of us because when we studied about it, it surprised us. That torments are also, the vices are part of these torments. And vices grow when we are not doing things useful. We are idle. And that is very interesting because we think that we are really busy when sometimes we are, but a lot of times we're busy for ourselves, which is a vice. Selfishness, the biggest one. And in that, in our vices, we start spinning out of place and we are in this torment. On the road to Damascus, he goes from Jerusalem in the torment, having these conversations. And things start changing. He's now in the conflict. He's starting to question, how come the love of my life, Abigail, how come she understood Jesus? What is in Jesus that he doesn't have it? He can't see it. But you can see there is a little, his heart is opening. He's scratching there. It's opening a little bit. And he's starting to feel it. The memory of Stephen and Abigail stood out the most, as if urging him to question himself even further. So when we are in our mental battles and we're questioning ourselves, good job. We are now out of the torment into the conflict. We are there. That's great. So it's okay for us to question ourselves. Self-doubt, not to put ourselves down, but to elevate us. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why am I coming to the center? What am I finding? Am I to the road to Damascus? Or am I here just checking the box? Because, I go to the center, go to the church, check the box. Or are we here because we are in the conflict? Why had these two siblings from Corinth acquired such prominence amid all the problems of his inner self? He's thinking that the status of him being the knowledge soul, he thought that was important. And he faces Abigail and Stephen's like, how come? Why are they that strong? And I am in this situation. Why had he waited for Abigail along all the paths of his youth for the ideal of a pure life? He's saying, why did she show up in his life? Why? Why Abigail? She wasn't rich. Nobody knew of her. Why was Abigail in his life? And then we stop again. Think of somebody that is in your life. Why is that person in your life? Why? Why did we meet our partners? Why? Why do we have this child or many? Why do I have this boss? Why? Is it for granted? Do we just think it just happened? Or is there something for us? God giving us this opportunity of self-transformation. In the road to Damascus, Saul faces the truth. And what an opportunity to face the truth. If we pray every day, we could pray, I want to face the truth and see Jesus. Oh, Jesus, I want to see you. Come, right? Like if anybody, I want to see Jesus too. And that's because Saul had an important mission. He deviated a little bit, and Jesus went there and called him. Why is it important for us to know the truth? Because only the truth can lead us out of the conflict. Nothing else. The truth is not attached to a label, to a religion, nothing. The truth only comes from God. And he had this opportunity. We all do. It might be that we don't recognize it, but we do. We are called to the truth every day. And in Spiritism, friends, the truth is very different. We don't say, believe because I said so, from anybody that is standing here, or just, read the book and believe it. That's it. No, they say, study, reflect, analyze, feel it. And when you do that, it will make sense. And when that makes sense, that's the truth. So strong that you cannot have this faith based on the truth and not believe it any longer. Now, this is Jesus to Saul. Faced. So, on the road to Damascus, friends, you have to read the book. I cannot do any justice to Emmanuel words. Okay, so it is way more descriptive than this. He's on the horse. He's blinded by light. He falls. He can't really see. He starts seeing the shape. He recognizes it's the master. He starts weeping. He can't believe it. And he is already feeling Jesus' presence. Jesus says, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Do not kick against the goads. Get up, Saul. Do not kick against the goads. That's us. We're saying, do this, and we're like going against the divine laws. And good spirits come and tells us, hey, try again, and we try to do the opposite way, and it hurts. But Jesus says, get up, Saul. What is Jesus saying? There's no shame. There is no blaming. There's just get up and do it again. Again and again and again and again. Get up, Paloma. Let's go. We can do this every day. So how do we get there? This is for us because it's an inner journey. Paul already conquered that road to Damascus. He did. He made a decision at that very moment. His plans changed. His name changed. He was back on track, aligned with the divine laws. Out of the conflict. Now there was no doubt in what he was supposed to do. The question is for us, how do we transform ourselves? How do we get out of this existential conflict? We learned that we need intense analysis of our conscience. That hurts, we know, because finding our soft points is always hard. And of course, we also know that we have many lives that we have been accumulated, many derailments. So we have lots to think, lots to analyze, lots to pinpoint, to find, to work on it. Once we find these pinpoints, what do? We need to work on these virtues. Influx of moral value. We need to talk about it all the time. What is moral value? How do we develop virtues? What are we doing this weekend? Do it over and over and over again. And once we conquer one, we go to the next. It's something seems so minimal, but I'll give you an example because the good spirits of the Spirit Society of Virginia asked us to work this week on being on time. Seems like it's not a moral value, right? Seems like, oh my God, like, really? And they explained to us to say, when we are not careful with people's time, it truly means that we think we are above others. Moral value. That's us so proudful, thinking we are above others so we can arrive later because they can wait. Seems so small, but the good spirits are never materialistic. There's always a reason. And you're like, okay, thank you. We don't want to do that. We will try better. So we need to study about the divine laws because without knowing it, we cannot start on this pathway to the truth. Once we have knowledge, friends, we are developing our brain, our mind. It's working. We are helping to boost discernment. And that will lead us to reason. Then we can balance right and wrong better. And when we know that everything we're doing is right, we are now a pure spirit. We are there. And of course, for us, just to go back to Saul, now he got into Damascus. He's self-analyzing. He's blind. Now imagine that you're blind, sitting in a room that to him is dark. All you have is what? Your thoughts. No radio at that time, no TV. It's just him and his thoughts. He's going through a strict spiritual discipline, examining errors of his past, the difficulties of his present, and the undertakings of his future. So he's not only saying what happened in the past, oh my God, how did I do this? It's stuck there. He's saying, okay, what did I do? What's happening now? What I'm going to have to do in the future. He's not stuck. He's also not only in the future, because when we're only in the future, then we have anxiety. Because we can't control the future, so we feel anxiety. But with the past, we cannot stay there because then we just are blaming and guilting and shaming ourselves. It's a combination. And he brings us to the very last slide on this. In our road to Damascus, Jesus told us, I am the way, the truth, and the life. In Spiritism, Jesus, our best guiding model for us. Around the universe, many Jesuses, many Christs. The Christ conscious is everywhere. For us, we need a model. He is ours. So if any time we are in the torment, feeling it, and we don't know what to do and how to get out of it, there's only one way. Look at our guiding model. What would have Jesus done? So friends, we'll leave you with that to move to the next part.
Wow. Powerful. We need a stretch. You can stretch, because now we're going to the second part. Our inner journey is done. Wow. We are already pure spirits. After these beautiful presentations, now it's time to roll the sleeves. That's why we need to stretch, roll the sleeves. Because now it's work, right? Workout. The body and the mind. Now we're going to, okay, no more sharing. The sharing is caring. All right, so here we are. So, Paul, from Saul to Paul. Now let's say we're in Paul's shoes. He is already Paul. Why did they change his names? You see, in this book it explains why. Because they transformed themselves. I know now it's a new thing, right? In society, we can change our names. But we're not talking changes for vanity. They didn't change. Also because the name Paul means being minor, meaning less. So when Jeziel changed to Stephen, he had also the duty before the person who released him not to be identified, but also because of his transformation to the Christ. But can we do this alone? No. And we have to say there's no very strongly. No. The people whom I hear saying, I read my books at home, I do my things, I do my prayers. That doesn't lead us to heaven. It doesn't. We need one another. Chico Xavier, from Jesus to Chico Xavier, Divaldo Franco, Paul of Tarsus, Steve, none of them stayed at home, working between God and them, far away from the world because the world is so hard. That doesn't make us grow. What makes us grow is here. When we're together and people are different. That's great. It's when we're together and we have different opinions. Wonderful. Because it opens our minds. And we tolerate, as Kardec says. For example, a spiritist society cannot stand up harmoniously without tolerance. Meaning understanding. People are different. Big deal. That's wonderful. We're different. We have different ideas. That's great. We can go places together. But if we don't know how to teamwork, we're not going to progress. When Emmanuel wrote the book, On the Way to the Light, explaining about the formation of the earth, he begins in the first paragraph, saying, a group of pure spirits, amongst them the Christ, planned and formed our planet in the name of God. Not even the Christ himself did it alone. Spirits alike formed a team to do it. As much as we need teamwork in our families, we need teamwork in our daily lives to progress. And in this book, we learn to teamwork. It's not easy. You will see. They bump heads often. But it wasn't different at Jesus' time. The disciples were also, I think you're too old. Oh, you're too young. You're to this, to that. No, you don't think of money. You should think of money. No, we should think more of writing. No, we should talk out to the people. No, we should be far away preaching and praying to God. And Jesus was always like, he was a wonderful team player. So the first question we need to ask, reflection is the only way, as Paloma mentioned, we're going to progress. Am I a team player? We need to refine it. Because it's the only way to evolution. Paul, when he was Saul, he was already good at it. So no wonder he shifted and was able to continue. He didn't start from scratch. He was a prepared spirit in many ways. And he knew how to teamwork in his family, his parents, his sister, and in his community, the Judaic community. He had his role. He was a doctor of the law. He loved the assemblies, the congregations, etc. So he was already, no wonder he did wonderful things for Jesus, because he loved teamwork from the get-go. We need to evaluate his features. And then he just refined it. He refined it, as Paloma mentioned, in the Christ-like values. It's not to teamwork, let's kill the Christians. No. Let's spread the good news and face the hardships. So, I was crying, Paloma. I was crying my road to Damascus. He was weeping, I was weeping too. And later we're gonna see that when he's transformed to the Christ, he becomes meek. It's unbelievable. It's almost surreal. How is this possible? A man who was so, as Emmanuel says in the book that is not fully published in English, but was translated, Harvest of Light, it says, he believed in the spirit of force, imposing.
You meant the spirit of love.
But the force of spirit, Emmanuel says exactly. Then he learned the force of spirit. Sometimes we want to teach our children like this. Don't do it. You're bad. We're bad. No wonder my grandmother used to say, we point 3 fingers against you, you're bad. Not our children. We want to teach people forcefully things. But as Emmanuel says in the preface, the Christ is not forceful. He doesn't impose on us. If we don't want to believe, it's okay. But what do? We become meek. The force of the Spirit. He learned it. And with that, Paul and team faced struggles and yet distributed consolation and healing. It's in page 530 of the book. He learned to face adversities. How many of us as spiritists, we say, yeah, I want to be there. I want to do the study. I want to help. I want to be part. But my work, but my family, but hey, nobody's going to do anything if we wait. I mean, that's part of the game. It's a samba. That's why Brazilians are good at this spiritist thing. I have to say, because it's okay, adversities, and we are dodging the ball. Yeah, you have to be flexible. Craziness happening at home. Still, get up, Soul. Get up, Vanessa. Go. We go and say, okay, that's okay. Our family member may be a deathbed, and yet we fulfill our duty. We may be facing a disease, and yet we're there facing our struggles and spreading consolation. As Mentor Joseph always says, if you want to do right in life, think of the people who are suffering daily. How many of us are there? Oh, my finances are not well. I wanted to do this and I wanted to do that, and my finances are not well. Things are not good at work. My family problems there too. And then we think we're disgraced, and then we come and talk to people and get to know. Open our eyes. Open. Don't be blind. Open your eyes and look at the real challenges that people are facing in this life. And we don't need to go to Africa to see it. If we come here to the center and we live in Northern Virginia, at our very lights when we stop our cars, they're beggars. They're not homeless, but they're beggars. It's so real. And people are like, they're playing games. No, they are not. Ask them, what's happening to your life? They will tell the story. Ask them, what's happening? Why is this happening to you? Listen to them. But they're like, if they were well, they wouldn't be there. But they are lazy. No, they have a problem. Even if it's mental illness, it's a problem. There are people who cannot go to work because they are mentally ill. That exists. And we don't need to go to Africa to help these people. It's right here at our corner. But we're busy. We can't stop our cars. We don't have anything in the wallet. What can we do? Well, let's say you literally can't because the light is open and you have to go. And you just have to go. At least say a prayer to that person. And then you go to Reston Town Center. In that noble neighborhood, there are many shelters. You call them, and they're going to see how many people are there. Families, from babies to teens. And I say, Virginia, we're sleeping here. It's surreal sometimes to think that we're sleeping and there are babies at shelters in Northern Virginia because of 10,000 things that happened to them. And we think our lives are difficult because we didn't get that investment to the level that we wanted. Because we didn't buy that $1 million house that we dream of every day. How can we be spiritist and be so vain? So vain. How? And look at our children, willing that they face the best when we don't care about the children of others who don't have anything, and they are in places we cannot find them because they are in shelters, but they are not well. We can't go on like this. It's not coherent. It's not coherent. So Paul learned the true way. We need to struggle. We need to stop thinking too much of ourselves and think more of others without expecting any reward. We need to distribute consolation and healing. And as Paul said once, it's in this book, page 514. God is in urgent need of a job well done. Urgent. It's one of the most beautiful affirmations in this book. Urgent need. So we cannot do this teamwork tomorrow. Yeah, when I retire, after this, after that, with or without any condition, we need to do it today. We cannot afford tomorrow because tomorrow doesn't exist. Only God knows where we'll be tomorrow. And every people spiritists whom I encountered who told me the very statement, Vanessa, I'm going to wait for my retirement. They died before they retired. In some cases, they got severely ill and could not do much. When my kids go to college, I don't think so. You don't know if you're going to be around. But I'm taking care of myself. Yesterday, I had a story, true story, and I'll share because we're praying for this person. She doesn't come here to our center. Actually, she doesn't want to be religious at all. But asking about her to a friend, this person said, can you believe she was visiting family in Brazil? Maybe she got a virus in the airplane. True story, just happened. And the virus led her to kidney failure. To the point that she almost died. She's still in the hospital. She still has to be there. Her life is here, but she has to be there for months before they know how she's going to come back to her house. And you think you have tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes. She was well. She had a good diet. Normal, good, healthy life. Suddenly a virus comes and takes that good life from us. Why? Certainly, when I last talked to her, I said, well, your name is from somebody in the Bible. How come you're not religious? Yeah, I don't care. Now it's time to sit down and think. Think. What are you doing in life? Looking forward to retire and go to Florida? You won't go to Florida. Because you stay in Brazil. Thinking of what you're doing to life. Do we want a virus again? We've been facing a virus for 2 years. It changed our lives, hopefully. If it didn't, there's always a new virus. But God is in urgent need of a job well done. We need to do it together. Paul, at the end of his life, well, 60-something, right? Then, after all he faced, he really became feeble, weak. But he was adored by the people around him. He became that idol for many people, for his kindness and firmness, determination, talking to children, teens, elderly people, people from all different conditions, and he always together, but he couldn't be at all times everywhere with everyone. Everywhere he went, he traveled more than we could ever imagine in a short period of time, few decades, in 30 years. He traveled and spread the world, the word in the world. Thanks to Paul, we're Christians. Because he was concerned about the Gentiles. We're the Gentiles. We don't come from a Jewish family. And if we come, we'll never hear about Jesus either, by the way. Because they asked him out. Unlike the Muslims who keep Jesus as a prophet, by the way. But the Jewish asked Jesus out. Though Jesus was Jewish. But thanks to Paul, we, the non-Jewish, got to know of Jesus. He sacrificed everything. Always together with team. A team that was working like this. As Emmanuel says, page 521. Jesus sending the message through Stephen and Abigail, and Paul in his supporting team, sending letters to all the people In this case, the Emmanuenses, but many others, the Corinthians. So when we open the New Testament, and it says, first letter to the Corinthians, the Hebrews, the Romans, they were writing letters because there was no internet, so they had to write. But they were not writing alone. It was teamwork. It was a mediumship meeting. And that's what we do at the Spiritual Society of Virginia, at Cardiac Radio, everywhere. It's teamwork, 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 teamwork. None of us can progress alone. But above all, we have the coach, Jesus. And even in his death, there is a group of spirits opening their arms to Paul. The end of this book, as we prepare for the next one, is the most fascinating part of it all. Because as Paul is sacrificed, he sees a group of spirits opening their arms. Paul of Tarsus trembled after the last blow, because he was killed, you know. They cut his throat. The spent body rolled on the ground as a horrible and useless corpse. He describes the valorous disciple of the gospel felt the anguish of the last physical repercussions. Little by little, he began to feel a soft sensation of relief. Loving and friendly hands seemed to be touching him lightly, as if through this divine contact alone they were lifting away the terrible impressions of his bitter sufferings. Overcome with wonder, he noticed he was being taken to a distant place. And then he perceived that kind friends wished to assist him in a more suitable place, so that he would have the sweet consolation of a peaceful death. After a few minutes, the pain had disappeared completely. Having the impression of being in the shade of some leafy friendly tree, he felt the caress of the morning breeze blowing by in refreshing gusts. Of course, he's there, seeing all these people who are helping him. It's teamwork from beginning to end. And who is there, the teamwork to receive him? Jesus, Abigail, and Stephen. His very conquests, from life to death, which doesn't exist because life goes on, we're going to be called today and tomorrow to teamwork. Today when we go home, let's think how we can improve this teamwork and evolve faster. As we're talking about being a spiritist now, Daisy is going to come to lead us into how we teamwork and reach out to others, spreading healing to the mind and the bodies. She's going to share with us a few healings that are extraordinary, right?
Friends, as we continue on this journey, right? We feel like we're going through this journey with Paul today. It's beautiful as we read this book and we truly see the transformation that Paul goes through. We see how the good news truly transforms ourselves and has healing effects, not only for ourselves, but how we can be instruments of healing for others.
And the book, we start all the way back with Stephen. Stephen has this example of selflessness for us. Because as we think about healing, it's not about going close to someone and extend our hands and the person is healed. What is needed internally for us to be instruments of God? Healing not only per se, as Vanessa said, the physical body, but healing our souls and being instruments of God whenever we are. So Stephen has this example for us of selflessness. All the way back, as we already heard from our dear Carol, when Stephen was enslaved, and he had all the reasons to be discouraged, to be completely angry, he had an opportunity to serve and help. He was called, as we heard from Carol, to help take care of a very important person at the time who was in the ship. And he has a slave. Some say, but he had no choice, right? He had to take care of him. But then how? It's not only what he did, but how he did it. He gave himself, truly. Did he had a hidden agenda? Was he calculating, oh, let me help this patrician because, what can happen? I'm going to help in, already thinking ahead. How many people help others with this hidden agenda? Thinking, I'm going to go to the homeless service once a month to check the box because then God will give me X, Y, Z that I want. This is the example of selflessness. When he gave so much of himself. He was there day in and day night. Did he know Sergius Paulus? He didn't know him. Did he have any idea? Was he a criminal? Was he a good person? Who was he? But he gave himself so much. See, when we truly give of ourselves, we're doing beyond what is the physical amen, because he was there and he was praying with him. He was talking about God. So imagine the emanations that he was involving him. Because we can take care of someone, a loved member, a child gets sick, and we're there. We give them food, we give them water, but we don't really care, right? We're like, come on, get better faster so I can go back to work. Because of you, I have to stay home. I'm missing this and that. How many people do that? Or taking care of an elderly member at home, and they feel like a burden. Because of you, I cannot leave my house. I'm restrained. Are we loving? Is that what love is about? Sergius Paulus was nothing for Stephen, but he truly gave beyond the physical body. That is the example of selflessness. We're still very far, but today we're being called to practice this selflessness. So much so that he got sick himself. Was he worried? Think about COVID. We just are in the ends of a pandemic. How many people? They might have family members sick at home. And they were like, I'm not going to get close because I'm not going to get contaminated. Did he worry about getting contaminated? He didn't. So he poured himself so much. And when we talk about healing, that's exactly what we're talking about, Stephen. This truly selflessness. where we don't have the hidden agenda. We're not calculating. We're not thinking, I'm going to give you this because you're going to give me that. I help you because you're going to help me later. That's not selflessness. That is the opposite. That's selfish. We're thinking about ourselves. But in this case, see how beautiful it is when we truly give of ourselves. And he not only was able to heal Sergius Paulus, yes, he ended up getting sick. And this might happen to us, especially those who are spiritist practitioner. Someone will come looking for spiritual help. We will provide, the center will provide the help. But then we go home and our lives might become tormented. And then we say, oh no, I'm not. How many people say, I'm not going to get into mediumship, or I'm not going to give passes at the center because I don't want to bring anything of this home. Is that selflessness? And then people say, but don't the mentors and spirits are protecting? Yes, they are. But Stephen's story is showing to us that we might get sick ourselves. Is that a bad thing? No, nothing is by chance. We might extend a hand to help others and we might get sick ourselves. But should that prevent us of truly being an instrument of God? No. Do you know why? Because Stephen's sickness is what freed him. Because he got sick, they were going to throw him out of the ship. Sergius Paulus said, no, this man healed me. How come? He's sick. So let us, in the next port, I will get on a little boat and I will bring him ashore myself. We can say that he got sick and he got lost, in the trip, and no one's going to know. But that act of selflessness, without that hidden agenda, allow Stephen to be freed and saved. So much so that when he gets ashore, and many things happening between, but to the point that he found those who were founders of the House of the Way that were truly spreading the words of Jesus. He met Simon Peter. Do we see how beautiful it is? Imagine if he hadn't helped Sergius Paulus, or if he was there as a slave, just doing the bare minimum. It's like, I don't care if this patrician dies or not, I'm a slave already. I'm probably going to lose my life already in this ship, so why am I going to take care of him and get sick myself? How many would we have the courage and selflessness of Stephen? So, but God is merciful, and he, because of his selflessness, he was freed. And through that, his life changed and he changed our lives. Because he got to know about the good news. So see, when he helped Sergius Paulus, he wasn't a Christian yet, quote unquote, right? He already had the Christians, the feelings of Christianity inside of him without the title, right? But he didn't know about Jesus yet. But because of the foundation, his mother, we heard how loving she was. And we heard how she truly gave to her children that foundation. He didn't need a label. He was already a Christian. And because of him, we are here. Because, remember, that wouldn't be Paul without Stephen. And without this team, we wouldn't be here today studying about Jesus. So it's a call for us to be these true instruments and to true heal not only ourselves, but to be healing instruments of God's in people's lives. That true selflessness. But selflessness also needs something else to come along, and that's when Paul comes in. Humility. How many healers do we know around the world, not only in the US, Brazil, so many places, that as they start to heal, they start to see, oh my gosh, I'm a God. What they start to do? They start charging for the healing sessions. They think that they are above others because they have this quote unquote gift. Is that humility? Or where is this coming from? Is it us? No, it comes from God. Everything comes from God. We are here today sharing this. We didn't write this. This truly came directly from God, Master Jesus. We are just sharing. So, as we are instruments of God and we heal, it's nothing about us. It's something that comes from above. So, who are we to charge for something that it's not ours? So, as we now jump to Paul's stories, we saw the beautiful encounter in the road to Damascus. As he started in the very first steps of preaching with Barnabas, they start to do the meetings very simple, right? At people's homes, very small. Again, another important note for us, because people think to heal, you need a hospital, you need beds, right? You need everyone wearing white. Oh, that is a healing center. But we come here or we go to other places, and why is the difference? Because we need something externally? Paul was transforming true healings. And it was a very simple, like Jesus, very simple, very humble. But people start talking, right? Oh, yeah. News, those type of news, they travel fast enough. And it wasn't too long that a Roman patrician, okay, just guys see the coincidence? Is that a coincidence? A Roman patrician who was sick heard about the healings of Paul. This was 10 years later, friends, from the episode that happened on that ship. 10 years later. But here is Sergius Paulus again. He comes back in the story, now as a proconsul. So he had a very high up position in the city that Paul was in. He heard about the healings, and he was, again, sick himself. Okay, a parenthesis here. And this might happen to us. Hopefully not, but people come to the center. They want to receive help. They receive the treatment. They are healed. They go home. Not too long. They get sick again. And then people say, oh, no, but that healing didn't really work. No. Because Jesus said, go now and sin no more. So if someone comes and gets healed, if they go back and get sick again, it's not on us, it's on them, because it's their choices. they need to change their lives. So, this is another example. Do you see how Sergius Paulus was sick? He's now sick, very sick again. But he has a good heart. They write in the book that as soon as he heard about the healings, he asked, because he was so sick, he asked for Paul and Barnabas to come to visit him. And at first they were a little intrigued. They were like, this very high patrician, they want to see us. So they're like, does he want to get help? Or is he using this as an excuse because the persecutions were already happening? But they were not afraid. They went. And Paul, because he had got to know about Stephen's story through Simon Peter, he was like, Sergius Paulus, that name is familiar. And then he remembered that was because of Sergius Paulus that Stephen was freed. So in this encounter, they arrive. Sergius Paulus is very sick. They describe him in the book as, you can truly see in his face, his body. But Paul says that he has kindness in his eyes. But he was not alone. He had a magician or a sorcerer by his side. This elderly man that we see here, called Bar Jesus. Sergius Paulus welcomed them and say, look, I know I heard you've been healing, but I want to know more. Tell me more. How come? Where is this healing coming from? I want to know, can you give me this medicine? And Paul, very skillful, he says, yes. I know the greatest doctor of all. And he's like, please tell me, I want to meet this doctor. What is the doctor, right? Don't we all want to meet this best doctor? When we go to the doctors, right, we read reviews online and we look for the top doctors' best reviews, right? Okay, friends, today you go home with the greatest tip. There is one doctor out there that surpassed all the top rankings. And this doctor, oh yes. And you know what? It's free. You don't have to pay. We already have access to him. So he says, yes, I know about a doctor. And he starts telling him about Jesus. And he was so moved. See, Sergius Paulus from 10 years ago to now, he was truly moved. And he said, look, I want to know more. Tell me more, but tell me, how can I know? Because Paul tells him, look, even if you don't know him, he already knows you and he's taking care of you. And he's like, how come Jesus? I'm just hearing about Jesus now and he says he's already taking care of me. How is that possible? Can you tell me more? How can I know? There's no way of knowing. And Paul says, well, do you remember 10 years ago in the ship when you got sick? Oh, wow. He was shocked. Because no one knew, remember, when Stephen, at the time, Jeziel took care of him and he got cured. Remember, he kept it very in the down low. He said, no one needs to know, but, I'm going to take you to a shore. I'm going to free you. So he couldn't believe. He's like, how do you know this? And Paul tells him the story, talks about Stephen and how Stephen, because of him, got to know about the good news. And Sergius Paulus was blown away. Well, but what do you guys think? Was Bar Jesus, the magician, quote unquote, happy when he started hearing about Jesus? Oh my goodness. He was filled with rage. He was so upset. He's like, how come? You are sorcerer. Who are you to come here and talk about this doctor? And he went on and on, friends, for over 1 hour Paul, very kind but firm. Yes, Paul was very firm. He talked to him and explained to him about Jesus, but and then Paul said, look, I understand you. I know what you're saying because I was like that. See, I was exactly like you, Bar Jesus. I heard about Jesus and I felt the same angriness, and I was also very outraged. And he says, you are blind. You are blind and you cannot see. But because of your stubbornness, now you're going to be truly blind. And like that, friends, he could not see anymore. At that moment, he got blind. And everyone came and they're like, I cannot see. That is, do you see the transformation of Paul? From being the one who was persecuting now, because he was so convinced and he was so coherent. They describe in the book that he actually said very little, but because of his emanation, it was enough. And at that moment, Bar Jesus, blind, physically blind, fell on his knees and cried and cried. And for 4 hours, they had to console him and talk to him. And he was indescribable. But after the 4 hours, he started understanding about Jesus, accepting it, up to the point that after those 4 hours, he regained his vision. But you see the journey? Sometimes we ourselves have to go blind to truly be able to see, because the light is like you're in a dark room, right? We're in a dark room, and then a light comes on, and at first we're like, oh no, turn that off, right? That's exactly less like when we get to know about the gospel, the good news. At first we go blind because the light, it's so bright that it blinds us. But then as we get to know and accustom ourselves, then we are truly able to see things very clearly. But then we get to the end of the story, and that's the highlight for us today. After a few days, Bar Jesus visited Paul again. Because he could still not put two and two together. He said, how come you do all this, you help, you heal? Don't you get paid? Don't you receive any money? Oh, friends, how many people say, wow, if you spend the time that you spend at the Spirit Center or studying and reading, doing other things, oh, you'll be a billionaire. How many times we hear this? That's exactly what he said. How come you're not getting paid for this? You can heal people. I became blind and then you brought my sight back, and you are not being paid for this? Paul said, humility, remember? He says, this doesn't come from me. This comes from God. It's not me. He says in the book, in every chapter, Paul reinforces that he worked throughout as he was helping, as he was spreading the good news. He continued working, fixing rugs, sewing. He never stopped. So he said, I have my full-time job. I work during the day, and in the evenings, I go and I help. He says, but I don't get paid for this. So he says, okay, but tell me, you can tell me, what is your talisman? And that's the main question for us today. What is the divine talisman? Because we all want to know, right? Don't we want to have this talisman that we can be a source of healing for others? We can be healers. Each one of us, friends, is not a specific person that incarnates. Yes, some people have a specific mission, but we are all healers in our lives and in the lives of others. But what is this talisman? Bar Jesus asks Paul. Do you want to know the answer? Well, this is what he says. Faith in God combined with selflessness. Faith in God, as we said, this humility, knowing that God is taking care of everything. I don't choose to heal you versus that person versus that person. It comes from God. When we come and we sit here to receive the spiritual passes, it doesn't matter who is the person who is in front of us giving the passes. What matters is our inner disposition. Because we read in all André Luiz's books that if we sit on these chairs and we are not open, or we sit here thinking, I want this, that in my life, this job, that house, that car, that trip, and we're bargaining, we can have Master Jesus in front of us. We're not going to be able to be healed. Jesus said, your faith healed you. He didn't say, I healed you. He said, your faith healed you. So faith, friends. So when we come to receive the parses or the spiritual treatment, whenever we are, those over the internet who does the online spiritual care, you don't need to be here in person. It depends on our inner disposition. This faith in God, saying, God, you know exactly what I need. Maybe right now, we don't know, maybe we need to go through this illness to learn. As Louise Hay says, we need to learn something from that illness before we shoot it away. So if we are going through that pain or that illness, there must be a cause. So first is faith in God. Nothing comes from us, it comes from God. Combined with this selflessness. Not thinking that I will do this to get that, or I'm going to speak to this person and not to that person. We're already doing the math. Is truly helping everyone. Has Stephen. So today, friends, let's keep this image of Paul and Stephen in our minds, thinking about that true example of selflessness and humility in our lives. And now to our final, like the cherry on top of it all, Luciana is gonna tell us even more about mediumship.
So, friends, as we study about the brick, the kids were making fun about the brick inside. So, Paul came to us and gave all this example, all this experience of his life. And the most important thing is that he was a medium. Before he even knew he was the medium. So that's why we're coming here now to study about mediumship with Jesus. Because there's no other way to be a medium. We need to have Jesus. Or else we're lost. We have no guidance. We have no information what to follow. So this mediumship that Paul had followed in his life is because we read all about the story, right? I'm not going to go back. But in this scenario, when he is close to Christ. He went through life going after the Christians of the people of the church, of the way. But Jesus came to him and asked him, like, why are you going after me? Why are you persecuting my people, the ones that trust me? Why are you doing that? And at this moment, when Paul actually still see Christ, he loses his sight. Because Jesus coming in front of him with so much energy, so much light, then he goes blind. And this is what happening to us, right? We are blind to see the light. When we are living our lives without using our mediumship, because we all are medium, breaking the news. We are all mediums here. Different types of mediums, but we are all medium. But when we are doing this mediumship without Christ, we are blind, morally, spiritually speaking. So then when Christ comes in front of Paul and shows him why you're doing that, why you're doing that to everyone, he goes blind of the physical body, but he has the insight of really understanding that now Christ lives, that all that people were telling about him, it is true. So we come here, we talk about, and if we don't really feel, right, that Jesus is with us, we can have many people coming talking about Jesus, 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 and we don't feel, it's not the same. So at this moment, when Jesus came and showed to himself, he was able to really understand. So we need to bring this Jesus close to us in order for us to do our mediumship. So he goes blind, and one of the person that he was persecuting in the past was the same medium of Christ that came to help him. So throughout the stories, throughout all the spirits book that we read, there is this mediumship of Christ that we sometimes don't pay attention. But look how beautiful this story is. So he was persecuting this man, right? We know, and then he comes back to heal him. Because Jesus, there's always a reason why Jesus do his things, right? It's like God. We know what everything has happened in our life for a reason. So he lose his sight, and then he recover his sight through the man, to the hands of the man he was actually persecuted. Wow, what a lesson. In our lives, how many, right? We go after and simply blindly don't follow the teachings of Christ, and we don't see. We don't see that they're there to help us, to being our mediums, our guardian angels, like we're studying with the kids in there. The guardian angel, the mentors that comes and help us and guide us. In our lives, sometimes we don't do that. But in this, we see that he has transformed. And once he transformed his life, he's like, now what I'm going to do with this mediumship? What am I going to do? So he's worried, right? He's worried because it is a mission. And when we truly feel the call that we receive daily, we need to do something. We need to do something. So he was kind of thinking what to do. And then Stephen comes and helps him, tells him what to do. Not only that, but Abigail also comes. Abigail, so important, comes and tells him. And when he asks, what am I supposed to do? I'm so overwhelmed. There's so much, because as we learned Corinthians, right? In the past, it was really hard. He has a lot of work to do to bring this mediumship, to bring Christ to all these people that were lost. So he had a lot of work, because he went persecuting everybody. When he saw Christ, he needs to fix all. He has to fix everything. So he had a lot to do. Then Abigail comes and tells him to be loving, and be at service and being patient. She's always telling him to be following the Christ, because only with him we can do something. And Christ is so merciful to him, because even though he persecuted Stephen, he sent him to bring closer to him, to be his mentor, his guide. So not only when he was feeling lost, those that knew more about Christ came to help him through this journey of mediumship. And then as they move, Paul got inspired about this mediumship that he had, this contact he had with Christ. He changed his name, right? He used to be Saul before, and then he starts to the mission, and then this friend tell him, wow, you should change your name, right? Because you are new. It's like you were reborn. All these old Saul things that he had, persecuting, all the bad, like the new reincarnation. He had a new life in the same reincarnation. Why not renew yourself? Let's transform your name and start anew, because we know if we do something wrong today, there is social media, there's so many things that is behind and tagging us along. So he's having this new opportunity to transform, change his name, and start this beautiful mission. So he was able to cure, able to help those in need, and then he was called to change his name. So that's when Saul changed to Paul, through his big showing of his truly faith in Christ, in his truly mediumship with Christ, when he was meeting and started doing the healings, showing to them that Christ heals you, as Daisy was saying. Christ comes to you and say, your faith, you are healing you. So he had this faith in Christ, and he was able to perform miracles. And then he changed. From that on, the mediumship went everywhere. And as we study here, there is good spirits that accompany us and those that doesn't. And here we see the spirits that wasn't very happy with him. Everywhere we go, every good work we are doing, we can see very good mediums go through very difficult expiations, trials in their lives, because they're doing the good. Our mentors here always tells us, if you are having difficulties, if things in your life is being hard, good, you're in the right pathway. Why? Because many doesn't want us to follow the Christ. So we be persecuted like Christ was persecuted. Saul persecuted all the others. And now when he became Paul, he now was able to change and transform himself. So if we are doing this mediumship with Christ, we are also being persecuted. But we had this faith like Paul had. We need to really bring the faith in our hearts, in our lives, not only here at the center, with people that are here in the community, but put in practice this mediumship that we have with our co-workers, with our in-laws, with those that doesn't like us very much. And we'll see that we are never alone. We are always with this team. Paul has his team in both realms, right? Here we have everything in both realms. The spiritual center in the spiritual realm and the spiritual group here. So we're never alone in both ways. So if we're being persecuted doing the mediumship with Christ, there's something that we need to put in count, that we're doing something good. And then he goes and get a little bit thinking. That's what we need to do, right? Pray. We teach the kids to do the praying, to connect. How do we connect with the good spirits? How we can really make sure we are aligned with Christ? It's when we meditate. It's when we be together. And then Christ brought Stephen to be helping him all the time. And he goes again, meditate, because everything in the spiritual realm is happening while we're here. So for us, when we go to sleep, we're teaching the kids the smart sleep. Today, we were talking about that. When we were doing the Pictionaries with them, to remind them that there's always time for us to do this internship with the spiritual realm, because we are having this experience here on the planet, but we do need to remind ourselves to go and connect, because again, we are all mediums, and the only way to be aligned with the Christians' teachings, with this mediumship with Christ, is to doing this connection daily, hourly, always being there. And then the good spirits are coming to us. Like Stephen and Abigail is always helping Paul. We have our own. We are always connected. We're always being called to follow the example. And as we know, life was difficult. He was still persecuted, even though he was working with Christ, right? As we say, if we're doing the right thing, we're still being persecuted. So the same continued to him. We see Christ in the cross, we see Paul, but look how beautiful it is his passaging. Because after all that he done in his life, going after many, he was actually renewing himself, and then at the time of his disincarnation, he was able to meet with those that he helped. He was brought to all the cities where he went and practiced the mediumship and opened centers, churches. He was able to do this visiting and see all the work with Christ that was done. And then when we're studying this, we cry because we see all the hard work that he did. And we need to do the same. We just need to look at Christ, look at Paul, and really feel this mediumship in us. And surrender. So when we disincarnate, we are able to really go and see what we had done. So only with Christ, only with him, we'll be able to be this true medium, to really feel, and hopefully when we disincarnate, we'll be able to have this change and be able to meet Christ. Because a spirit like Paul, to be able to go through this hard life and then in the end still being seeing Jesus, we need to strive to have Paul as our guide and model, as our model, to follow the step. Of course, Jesus is our guide and model, but look his life. Look how much he gave of his life to help those in need. How many churches was created and how many sacrifices? So if we really read these books, we'll see how many sacrifices, how many lessons is in there in order for us to really feel and be aligned with Christ. So I'm sorry about the emotion, but when we read and when we study, again, it's just like too much. It's so much. And I hope we all here can feel this call to be working, because Jesus is calling us to be working with him. And we'll see the kids. Yes, they're ready. We'll have the little scene from Paul and Stephen, and you really feel the mediumship and how everything was working. So be patient. Let's see if everybody's going to be able to see on the internet.
Gabriel, can you come here so that they can see you? Ben, can you come here? Yeah, we're gonna line up this. Peter, James, Mary Mark.
Okay.
No, you could leave.
Wait, what about
Peter will go here.
Baby.
And then James, and then
Nobody can see you. And we're squished.
Okay, I'm gonna push a button. I'm gonna push a button. We have a time machine.
A time machine? I'll go back in time so I can read it.
Well, you are, and we're watching you in the past. Okay? Right now, you are more than 2,000 years ago.
Really, seriously, stop.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
The city of Corinth, located in Greece, was prosperous but sinful. One day, Paul, the apostle of the Christ, came to the city with friends Aquila and Prisca and formed its first Christian church. But Paul traveled with companions through the Roman Empire to disseminate the teachings of the Christ. Wherever he stopped, he formed new churches. One day, far away from Corinth, he heard that the Christian community from Corinth was experiencing discord and difficulty. He could not be there in person to help, so he prayed to the Christ. Paul the Christ wants you to write letters, epistles to them, as well as any other church who would need help. That's it. Jesus Christ wants us to write the recommendations in the letter form.
Sounds fantastic. I will help taking notes.
The community in Corinth will absolutely love it. Let us gather to allow the Holy Spirit to manifest. If I speak in tongues of men or angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong and playing cymbals.
If I have the gift of prophecy and if I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I'm nothing.
Love is peace. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love it is not envy. It is not boast. It is not proud. Love does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not angered easily. It does not keep track of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoins the truth.
Love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always preserves.
Love will never fail. And these three remain: faith, hope, and love, and greatest of all, love.
Glory
to God, peace on earth, goodwill and love to humankind.
Thank you, friends over the internet. Have a beautiful day.
Already.
Maybe your car.